James, perfect day to have someone like you on this day, the day before the weekend, like, here on Transatlantic. I'm very happy. And this should be like a very good ocean, man. I feel it.
I'm very happy to sink into these waters with you.
By the way, you have the reputation of being one of the most nice person in the business, because every time your name comes up, it's always like, oh, James, a super nice person. I think it's a great reputation to have these days. Gotta tell you, I definitely do not have that reputation. So
I will take it. It's all a facade. It's
it's a facade.
all complete front, complete
Okay,
back underneath.
I'm gonna cross the ocean of James through the seven C's interview. So 7 questions, and we start with the first one. Okay, Alvin Toffler was an American writer and futurist, and is known for his words discussing modern technologies. He was an avid ocean lover and sharply crystallized the first wave theory in one of his essays. Now, he once says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So what have you unlearned most recently? And most importantly, what have you relearned?
Oh man, I gotta say, like I absolutely I love this question.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Like we are, I think like we're at this sort of accelerated like human experience,
Mm-hmm.
and and like I have the pleasure of I get to work in experiential is often like the forefront of technology, so obviously we're learning new technologies all the time, right? But I think that like the first part of your question is what you need to unlearn, and I think the trap that we all sort of fall into is like you have to unlearn the idea that the technology is that's the idea, that's the king, that's the like the you get drawn to the flashy new thing, especially now, because the flashy new thing that shows up every 10 seconds, right? The other thing to unlearn for me, like the big thing that I try and get all my creatives to unlearn is, and this is like it's a lesson from AI, right? If you look at what's happening with AI right now, like AI is like it's like the best student in the class. It's not trying to give you this wonderful and like the best answer. It's not. It's trying to give you the answer that you like. And I think as agencies and as people and as creatives, we get caught in this trap of trying not to give the best answer for the human who's going to experience what you create, but to give the best idea that your client is going to love. And I think that does the people that we're ultimately trying to talk to a disservice. So like one of the things I go to my creators all the time, and they're like, "Oh, the client's going to love this." It's like, yeah, the client's going to love this. What are people going to experience? What's the truth of what you've actually done? What's the like what's the emotion that you're eliciting? What like how would you how does this lift you out of your mundane world and make you better? So that's a constant process. You have to unlearn that every day, because it's very easy to fall in that trap, because we're all creative people, we're all insecure, we're all seeking approval, right? And that's where you're going. The like the relearning is again that like constantly relearning the wonder of what your ideas can bring, like relearning that reaction, like relearning that the importance of like seeing someone react to what you're doing and feeling that emotion.
You had a great visual metaphor, like, AI is the best students in the class. The one that always like keep raising his hands and want to make the teacher happy, like,
No, it brings the apple,
right,
but
right.
it doesn't always bring the most original thought. It
It's
doesn't
true.
bring the
It's
thing,
true. We have this attempt to like continuously please our client, because that's what, like, like we kind of sometimes confuse the solving of someone else's business, supporting them, with pleasing them, as there's a very thin line between
right?
supporting and pleasing someone, right? Sometimes when you support someone, you have to be tough, or you have to do something that not necessarily goes according to, like, you know, that person taste or the person lifestyle, but that's a true support.
Yeah, I think like very, very early on in my career, someone took me aside and said, like, you're telling them what they want. What your job is to tell them what they need. What they need to hear. And sometimes that's, like you said, sometimes that's tough love. Sometimes that's not always
it does not always happen, though. I gotta say, these days and age, we all know that that's a very difficult task. Probably is the most difficult task in advertising, when you draw the line, because there is always the fear of losing the business. And, like, you know, to get too tough, to get too uncomfortable, and then it's like the step to get to the point where you are considered like too hard to work with. Also, like, it's very quick.
But part of that is also like, all right, so what do you have to relearn every day? You have to relearn how to build that trust, like how to approach it so that your client knows that what you're fighting for is a creative idea, but that creative idea was created with their best intentions in mind, right? With their best, with it's designed, like, we are creative problem solvers. It's designed in the most creative, cool way, the way that's going to break through and be effective. It's going to work for them, but that's what you're doing. You're not fighting because you're an egomaniac or because we have to paint it this shade of blue. It's that shade of blue is the right shade of blue because it's going to work for you.
Definitely. Second question: the Titanic sit 3,800 meters deep in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. I'm sorry if I use meter. I know, like, I should use, like,
no.
measurement system, but like, you know, that's the exact measurement. Darkness is so prominent down there that even modern camera have a hard time to capture neat, clear images of the ship that sunk more than 100 years ago. He has become a relic, an old thing that sits at the bottom of the ocean. By definition, an historical object that belonged to the past. If you were to sink down manually into the ocean something from the advertising world, just like put it down there so it belongs to the past and it doesn't show up in any of the present or future, what would that thing be?
I think it would be, and I'm going to steal from Susan Cradle here a little bit. We had a conversation on one of the last juries I was on, and it was fascinating. The words branded entertainment. Take those and sink those to the bottom of the ocean, because we spent half the day not discussing work, but just talking about what those two words mean. Because everything that we do is branded as advertisers, and everything we do should be entertainment. It should capture you. It should transport you. It should, like, lift you out of your mundane world and give you a new experience. And we sort of relegate that. That's something that sits off to the side in our world. Right. There's this, so the idea that, like, our commercials should be, like, hard selling, like, you know, the things that we, like, put onto television is like that should entertain you as much as this wonderful film that we've created that is going to run on YouTube and like, you know, 15 people are going to see. The thing that I do, like building experiences for people, it's like those should be branded entertainment pieces as well.
This buzzword kill me, man. It's like, I feel sometimes that we are all a bunch of, like, you know, kids, like, riding these balloons, like, in the air, and these balloons are like these, like, buzzwords, right? And from time to time they just pop, and then there is another balloon coming up, another buzzword, and we're gonna ride that buzzword, like, for another, like, a year or 2 years. It's just like, it's freaking ridiculous sometimes, like, you know. And brand entertainment is one of those words, though.
It is. It absolutely is. It's also, like, you're right. It's like we categorize our work rather than that's a great idea. It's like, that's a great piece of, and the idea that one, like, the other thing I'd love to sink to the bottom is that there is creative specialization. There are people who are better at things than others, but, like, one agency can only do one kind of thing, right? And, like, you're a content agency, you're a above the line agency, you're a shopper. It's like the idea that, like, a great idea that we create should be able to meander and move through all those things and express itself through all those things without having to be this specialized piece. Like,
Well, you know,
not
of
so rocket
course,
science.
I tell you, you know, it's like being raised in Europe, coming from Europe, having worked like in both continents, and this is gonna open like a door that is gonna need another like 3 episodes of transatlantic. But the specialization is so ingrained in American society. I mean,
Yes.
you go to the dentist for cleaning.
Yep.
Need a root canal. You gotta go to another dentist that does only root canal.
Right.
Something else, you go to another dentist to treat your gums. Like there are 3 dentists to do 3 things, very highly specialized. I can tell you that in Europe, there's only 1 person that does the whole thing. So that's what, just the tip of the iceberg. But I think like the hyper specialization is the double sword coin. It's a double coin. It has like, you know, positive and negative side. Like when you look at the negative side, it's very clear the limitation on the mindset and on the creative freedom. But I do think that that's one of the things that can be impossibly removed from the American society. It's the way American is shaped. And with hyper specialization come like labeling people. Like we do label people all the time. In advertising, we do it all the time. I know that there is a romanticized idea of creative, but it doesn't work that way. All the recruiters label people, all the agencies label people. If tomorrow you need someone on an automotive brand, you're probably going to look for someone that's worked on automotive already.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's such a strange thing, because what you're asking creatives to do is stretch out beyond themselves, stretch out beyond what's been done before, like break down things, like recombine things. And then you tell them, but you can only recombine things within this box. Don't break out and don't go over here. That's Bob's territory over there. That feels like a really strange way to.
That's one thing to learn. That's one thing to learn. Anyway, talking about children, children and density. So there is, to teach children about density, some teachers adopt a technique known as water drawings. So the first important step is to check whether you pick the right markers that you can use to do the experiments. So failing to do so, if you pick the wrong marker, you can't even do the experiment. So the very first lesson that you learn is like, bring the right tool. My question for you is like, for a young creative that start in advertising, what is the equivalent of that marker? If you want to start in advertising, what's the single best tool that need to bring with him or her?
I think you like this, your water marker that you have, that every creative needs to have, that it's curiosity. It has to be, right? It's like you have to start with it with a curious mind. You have to start with a mind that's gonna like crack open every book, have every conversation, like is open to learning. And like how does that work? I mean, look, the world that we're in right now, it's like there's so many new technologies happening all the time, and the only way that you learn is by jumping in and actually getting your hands on them, starting to use them, and starting to use them in ways that other people aren't. So you have to be naturally curious. You have to be naturally curious about people, about the people that you work with, about your clients. So you have to understand, like we were saying at the beginning, their motivations, their like what drives them, but also like who the hell are you selling to? Like the curiosity of being able to like mentally leave New York or Los Angeles or all these like wonderful creative bubbles that we live in, and like go out into the world and like really think about like what real people are going through and what they really care about, and how do you reach them in new and interesting ways. But all of it's with a curious mind.
What do you think about the marker of self-confidence? I think like when young creatives get into this business, they start learning very quickly about rejection. I remember once I was talking to another creative, a good friend of mine, and he was telling me, you know, the fact that we are always constantly fighting the rejection is because when someone tells you this idea is not good, it's the equivalent of telling you your brain is not good or you thought is not good. It's so, because that's where the idea comes from, right? Like, you know, it's not as the same as, I mean, I have a brother as an engineer, right? And he helped design like the electrical system of train.
Yep.
So he's one part of the whole process. But I don't think someone sit there and tell you like, this might be not as good as expected. I don't think it becomes so personal as you, James, got an idea. You're telling me this idea, and I'm telling you this idea is not good. It gonna feel very personal.
It does, but I don't know, like self-confidence, like, okay, so resilience, but this, and this will go into something with, like, I've been thinking a lot about, like, I've worked with creatives who are not necessarily like so self-confident that they'll stand up and fight for an idea, that you have to like catch them and be like, no, that's brilliant. Like, you have to help them flourish. I don't know whether you need it to get to a certain level, right? To be where you are, or to be where I'm fortunate enough to be at. You have to sort of believe that in your taste, in your vision, and
Yes.
that does take self-confidence. But to work in the creative field, what we ask you to do is we ask you to bring us thoughts and ideas that haven't that haven't been thought of before, that are new, that are different, that take us into new places. And I don't know whether I need you to stand up and fight for every single one of them, or be crushed afterwards with, like, if that idea goes away. What I love is the creatives who, they're almost like wildly, it's not self-confident, they're wildly optimistic. Wow. They're like, okay, you didn't like that idea? Here's 7 more ideas that are fantastic. Or like, oh, here, like, you didn't like that part of it, but I can take this part of it and make it that much better. Yeah. And they just never stop seeing the bright side of it and seeing where things can go. And I think that
optimism is a great
more than like this sort of like, yeah, I'm the visionary. That I wonder if we need.
That's a good marker, man. That's a good marker to bring. 4th question. I recently watched an interview with Edward Gore, a Tony Award-winning costume designer, who once illustrated like the War of the Words. Can't pronounce that. I mean globe. Like, you know, like, but I can't. Somehow I have like a hard time pronounce R and L together. Anyway, it's like
my Italian is horrible. So whatever, like, whatever you say.
Edward lived in his beloved Cape Cod, near the ocean, and he had a very specific point of view on the creative process. He say, every explaining something makes it go away, so to speak. What's important, what's really important, is what's left over after you have explained everything else. Now, we work in an industry where creative are required to over-explain every single aspect of their idea. Do you think that over-explaining an idea is going to end up killing the idea?
I think I would absolutely agree with that. I think over-explaining an idea is like over-explaining a joke.
Yeah.
So like, you know when you have a great idea. You know when you have a great idea and you present it, and like the client gets it on slide 2. Like, what I would say is, like, I work in the experiential field, right? The experiential field means there's no cutting away. There's no second take, right? Like, everything we do like happens in front of somebody. And so you can see the reaction on their face, and like, you know if something's not working or if it's working. So experiential creatives are very like almost risk averse. They do work out every single detail. And so the presentations you get are books. And what we keep having to do with them is like pull back, like, no, what's the feeling? Sell me the feeling. Tell me what, like, I understand you will know all of these details, and you should know all these details. But you don't need to tell me that. Right. You just need to tell me what's the feeling that people are going for. What are they coming away with?
You know, when I think about over-explaining in advertising, it comes to me, one of the reference is very old right now as a reference. Like, you know, I think it belonged to our generation. I remember when the Gorilla ads by Juan Cabral came out, right? Of course, there was like a strategy behind, of course, but I think I remember like reading the comments and reading like people are trying to explaining. It was like ruining for me. It's just like the beauty of like Strong's idea is like, just leave it alone. Just don't explain it, just feel it. Truly, like, just feel it. Just like
how do you explain? Yeah. Do do you really want to know how the magic trick is done?
Yeah.
Or do you want to sit there and go, that guy just made a woman appear out of midair three feet above the stage? And like, you want to believe in magic. You want to believe in escape. You want to believe that things can fly. You don't necessarily need to know the wires.
Fifth question. There is an anonymous poem called The Indispensable Man. One of the stanzas of the poem read, take a bucket and fill it with water. Put your hand in it up to your wrist, pull it out, and the hole that's remaining is a measure of how much you'll be missed.
Wow.
It is a stanza that is like widely open to interpretation, but what do these words mean to you? I mean, we get into a business where you are constantly reminded that like everybody's replaceable. Nobody is actually indispensable. What do you think?
That's maybe the best question I think anybody's ever asked. I keep saying this, like when things get too, when you get too intense in the work and you're really exploding about, you're really made angry about something. It's like, look, what we do like is not it's not rocket science, right? It's not, we're not saving lives. Like we say that a lot, but let me rephrase. Here's what I would say to this. I think what I take from that is, we've talked about this a little bit, like humility is important, right? Knowing that, yes, like you can move through this world, and the things that you're going to leave behind, to me, it's like, yeah, we're going to leave behind these pieces of work, these pieces that hopefully, if we do our jobs well, they embed in culture, like the gorilla, and like people talk about it, 10 years from now. But a lot of the stuff we create isn't going to do that. Like, and that's okay. It's how we treat each other as we get through that, how we treat each other as we move through the process of creating those pieces. I think those are the things that you're going to remember on your deathbed. I don't think you're going to sit there and go, oh, like that great car ad I created. You're going to say that friendship that I created with that director on that car ad that made that thing 10 times more magical than it could have been. That's what was important.
But do you think that James Robinson is indispensable? Or do you think that there is another James Robinson, and there are like other 100 James Robinson that could do exactly what you do? And it's not about being indispensable. It's just about being at the right time at the right moment.
Well, you and I are talking about the difference between indispensable and like irreplaceable, right? It's like none of us are irreplaceable, right? There's another person who's going to come along. There's another James Robinson out there who will slot into my position and do the job, but they'll do it differently and they'll bring something different to it.
That's a great point.
Everybody is like going to bring, like, the reason that we are in the jobs that we're in is because you have a unique perspective. You're bringing a unique philosophy, and that is like when that goes, I would hope you're missed a little bit more than the disappearing hole in a bucket of water.
Oh man!
I hope at least someone was like, "Hey, that guy used to sit in that chair. He was all right.
He left a hole."
Yeah, he left a hole in the chair at least.
Okay, man. Water under the bridge is a colloquialism that originated actually in the early 1900s. It refers to the fact that water of a river flows constantly towards the sea and is not still, indicating that the water that has already flowed under the bridge will not return under the bridge. Each of us carries mass of water under the bridge that has flown. Now, looking back at your career, what have you moved from? What's your water under the bridge? What have you let go?
Wow. Well, look, I started my career like everybody else. Like I want to make the killer piece of film, right? I want to, like, I started out making pieces of communication that, like, as good as they were, they talked at you, right? It was a one-way piece of communication. And every step in my career has been a step towards getting closer and closer and closer to an interaction with people. And it started out like it has become more and more pronounced. Like I went from films to like, okay, here's interactive content, to now it's like the thing that I'm in right now is like I am face to face with people. I am seeing them in real life react to things, and that to me, I don't think I can go back to creating stuff that talks at. I'm only really interested in the stuff that converses with.
And personality wise,
Hmm.
is there any aspect of you that you had that you let go, and like, you know, and now you don't have that aspect anymore? You literally, like, you know, it's like water under the bridge.
Every day I kind of wake up and I have to let go a little bit more of this. I have to let go of the idea that I have to solve it. That my job is to change is to come up with a brilliant idea and like put everyone on my back and carry them forward. My job is to put, like, to be almost like someone said this the other day, to be like a shepherd. You're the sheepdog, right? You're moving the herd in the way that it's supposed to move, but the herd is going to take you into new places and it's going to do new and interesting things. So it's like, or a gardener, like find the what's that new person, that new idea, like who's going to bring that thing to me that I would never have thought on my own, and then help them nurture that and bring that.
This is a great insight, because normally this visual metaphor of the shepherd and the herd, I always like notice like it's like a reference to the fact like I'm the shepherd and I'm gonna guide you, but you say it in a different way, which is very fascinating, and I think it's truly like, you know, an interesting point, where is the herd that is guiding you to different places.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you go with it. So it's not just guiding them, but it's like let yourself guide by the herd, because they're gonna be probably the one that's gonna indicate the routes, and then you're always gonna be like, you know, in forefront.
Yeah. Your job is to keep them, is to create a safe place, like create a safe place for that journey to happen. Yeah. I'm glad you put that, because like I was like halfway through that metaphor, I was like, I'm not sure I know where this is going.
No, I love it. I love it. Hey, look, this is like we got to the shore, to your shore, like, you know, and it's a question we ask to all our guests. Like, if there was a wind that blow your sail, like you had to name it, what would the name be?
That's interesting. I had to name it.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing, look, like, I guess it's like, for me, it's humanity. It's like I said in the previous answer, I've been moving closer and closer and closer to trying to connect. Everything I do is it has been about trying to create a deeper connection through like film, trying to create a piece of like interactive art that like connects. And finally, I'm sort of at a point where I'm shaking hands with people and I'm looking them in the eye as we're creating these things, and you get to see those reactions in real time. That's what I love, because that's the only honest representation of what we do. That's the only honest measure of what we do, is seeing someone's reaction and seeing them lift up.
You remind me of, like, you know, they opened like quite a few years ago a nightclub called Giorgio's in I think it was in the Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, and it was named after like Giorgio Moroder, the musician composer that, like, you know, wrote the soundtrack of Midnight Express, Scarface. Is a very, like, one of the genius that we have in our country, Giorgio Moroder, and he came to LA many years ago, and he actually one night ended up like at this club. And he saw people dancing to his music, and his words were like, I never saw people dancing to my music. I was always in studio. I never really had that tangible, like, you know, result, the outcome of my creative product. You made me think of that, because I think that's what experiential is about, right? Experiential is like you have a creative idea, you put it out there, now you see like people reacting to it, and like I think it's so important, like also for your creative vibe, also for your creative, like, you know, motivation, because it motivates.
It's like why, you know, it's like why that you've got great film actors, they always want to get back on the stage, because they get to actually hear that applause in real time, right? And it's like, so there's an element of ego there too. You get to get that warm feeling.
James, thank you so much for being part of Transatlantic. Has been like an amazing ocean crossing. And I mean, I wish you only the best. Stay in the wind, my friend.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. I've never had a conversation like this, and I hope we have it again.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.